Jonalyn C. Palcon, and today I'm going to discuss about managing conflict. Let me define first the meaning of conflict. So conflict is a disagreement that arises when two or more parties perceive a threat to their interests, needs, or concerns. Conflict management is an important part of any relationship, any group, or any organization. You may experience conflict with a friend, a classmate, a coworker, a supervisor, or a subordinate. Conflict may be about personal preferences, political differences, or organizational policies and procedures. People experience conflict with other person, in teams or in groups, as well as between larger entities, departments, organizations, communities, and countries. Conflicts appear at home, at work, and in our spare time activities with friends. Parties need to accept conflicts as part of life dynamics and learn to deal with them effectively and efficiently. Conflict management refers to the way we manage incompatible actions with others, where others can be a person or a group. According to Seybold, Deer, and Nielsen, conflict arises whenever interests collide, and the public sector is one place where interests inevitably collide. Many people think that conflict is a negative force and dysfunctional, that it makes people feel uncomfortable and consequently makes them less productive. Yet, when conflict is properly managed, it can be extremely beneficial to the workplace. According to Lulubs and Kahn, the more we trust other people, the more certain we will be of their motives in conflict. When there is a trust, we are more likely to think that other people have our best interest at heart and will not use power to hurt us. These are the types of conflict management skills. Number 1 is communication. Conflict can be avoided simply with clear, accurate written and verbal communication. A single lost email could lead to failed plans and fingers pointed. Assumptions about what other people already know, think, or intend can cause resentment or worse. Some people argue just because they want to feel heard. Simply being a good listener can be enough to inspire trust and resolve hurt feelings. Number 2 is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand your own feelings and those of others, and to handle those feelings well. People who have high emotional intelligence are good at identifying and meeting the needs of others while taking responsibility for their own needs and feelings. Next is empathy. Empathy means feeling what others feel, the ability to see a situation from someone else's viewpoint, and to understand their needs, motivations, and possible misunderstandings is critical to effective conflict management. And lastly, creative problem solving. Understanding and communication are all very well and good, but do not help much if you don't have a solution for the underlying problem, whatever that problem may be. Conflict often happens because no one can come up with a workable solution. So, resolving the conflict depends on creating a solution. The 2 dimensions of conflict. According to Thomas Gilman, these 2 behavioral dimensions determine how an individual approaches conflict. Number 1 is assertiveness. Assertiveness is to satisfy one's own needs and concerns. Number 2 is the cooperativeness. Cooperativeness is to satisfy the other party's needs and concerns. So now, let us all watch the video regarding the Thomas Gilman model of conflict management.
The Thomas Kilmann model organizes 5 conflict management styles based on 2 dimensions: assertiveness and cooperativeness. Cooperativeness is how much you want to meet the needs of others. Assertiveness is how much you meet your own needs. You may respond in one of 5 styles: competing, avoiding, collaborating, accommodating, or compromising. So which one do you practice? Competing is when one pursues his or her own concerns at the other person's expense, using whatever power seems appropriate to win. Competing might mean standing up for your rights or defending a position you believe is correct. Collaborating is an attempt to work with the other person to find a solution that fully satisfies the concerns of both. This involves digging into an issue, learning from each other's insights, or trying to find creative solutions. This requires a high degree of trust and requires a lot of time to get consensus and everyone on board. Compromising is finding a mutually acceptable solution that partially satisfies both parties. So, this involves splitting the difference or seeking a quick middle ground position. You get something and you give something up. Avoiding is when an individual does not immediately pursue his or her own concerns or those of the other person. He or she really just does not address the conflict. So this involves sidestepping an issue, postponing an issue until a better time, or simply withdrawing from a threatening situation. Accommodating is when an individual neglects his or her own concerns to satisfy the concerns of the other person. So there is an element of self-sacrifice in this mode. Accommodating might take the form of selfless generosity, obeying another person's order when you would prefer not to, or yielding to another's point of view. You may actually help get things done with this smooth style over rough times, but at the same time, you may be seen as a doormat, and the team loses out on valuable opinions and ideas. So, in the end, we can't really change our situations, but we can change where we step on the conflict model, and the good news is you're only one step away from another box. And the great news is conflict is learned. So we can learn a new approach, and it's just a matter of practice. So like we learned from Terry, our minds are plastic, and so with every action we take, it makes it easier to repeat that action. What we practice is what we do, and what we practice the most is what we do the most, and often default to. So what conflict style will you step into next? We hope you enjoyed this brief overview of the Thomas Kilmann model.
The Thomas Kilmann conflict models. Competition is high on assertiveness and low on cooperation. Acting aggressively and trying to win is one way to deal with a conflict. However, winning can become more important than making a good decision. Collaboration is high on assertiveness and high on cooperation. When both sides of a conflict have important concerns, the teams need to search for solutions that satisfy everyone. This requires both cooperativeness and respect for others' position. Compromise characterized by a moderate amount of assertiveness and a moderate amount of cooperation. One way in which to balance the goals of each participant and the relations among the teams is for everyone to give in a little. Avoidance is low on assertiveness and low on cooperation. This approach tries to ignore the issues or denies that there is a problem. By not confronting the conflict, team members hope it will go away by itself. Accommodation is low on assertiveness but high on cooperation. Some team members may decide to give up their position in order to be agreeable. They are being cooperative, but it costs the team the value of their opinions and ideas. The sources of conflict are personal differences, information deficiencies, role incompatibility, and environmental stress. In personal differences, it is influenced by the personality and culture of the individual. It is also the perceptions and expectations. Next is the information deficiencies. It is the misinformation and misrepresentation. Next is the role incompatibility. It may lead to conflict and in turn to poor performance. It is the goals and responsibilities. Next is the environmental stress. It is the resource scarcity and uncertainty. The four types of conflict. Person versus person. It is an external conflict that involves a mental or physical struggle between two characters in a story. For example, a husband and wife disagree about how their money should be spent. Next, person versus self. It is an internal conflict that involves the struggle between the character and his or her conscience. For example, a teenager is torn between ditching school with her friends and staying to do the review before the test in a class she is failing. Next is a person versus nature. It is an external conflict that involves a struggle between the elements of nature that are beyond his or her control. For example, a family is stranded in a snowstorm. Next is the person versus society. It is an external conflict that involves the struggle between the character and the rules or laws that govern the society in which he or she lives. For example, a teenager breaks a driving law by running a red light. Types and levels of conflict. Interpersonal, it is within an individual. It is experience takes place in the person's mind. Hence, it is a type of conflict that is psychological involving the individual's thoughts, values, principles, and emotions. Next is the interpersonal. It is between individuals. It is a disagreement in some manner which can be emotional, physical, personal, or professional between two or more people. Such disagreements are commonplace in families, workplaces, and society in general and are not necessarily physical or violent. Next is the intragroup. It is within a group. Intragroup conflict refers to a specific kind of conflict that occurs between members of a group that shares common goals, interests, or other identifying characteristics. Lastly is the intergroup. It is between groups. It is a disagreement or confrontation between two or more groups and their members, such as between work departments, entire companies, political parties, or nations. These are the tips for managing conflict. Avoid feelings or perceptions that imply the other person is wrong or needs to change. Communicates a desire to work together to explore a problem or seek a solution. Exhibits behavior that is spontaneous and distraction-free. Identifies with another team member's problems, shares feelings and accepts the team member's reaction. Treats other team members with respect and trust. Investigates issues rather than taking sides on them. Thank you for listening. Happy learning. Good day and God bless.